Midvar, because I want to make sure everybody gets one question or the 5 minutes. But we will put you on the second round. For now, let's go with Senator Moody. It will be followed by Senator Kutcher and Dasco.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'm going to direct my question to Monsieur Borbey, please. Actually, to both of you, if you don't mind, but primarily to Mr. Borbey. Black public servants have identified for many years a number of changes they believe needed to happen within the public service to promote diversity. And this includes things like effective training, mentorship, and changes to the staffing process. In fact, I'd say that it has come to a head. So slowly has the public service been able to change and to adjust and to make meaningful change, that in fact there is currently a lawsuit mounting against the federal government with more than 600 Black former public servants who are alleging that they face discrimination in the workplace. So despite the recognition that you both so amply state that the public service has a lot of room for improvement, clearly the wheels of change have been very slow. With this new legislation, what is your expectation? How quickly would public servants expect to see changes rolled out in their workplaces? In fact, it's been very slow to date. So what's new and what's different now?
So maybe I can answer by saying the changes in legislation are going to help. I've tried to highlight where I think it will lead to some improvements. Some of it will take some time. We have to work on, for example, reviewing all of the different assessment tools. That's going to take some time to be able to identify bias-free tools that we can then deploy to departments to use. But we're going to be working on this in earnest to get it done as quickly as possible. But we have to look at this in the context of a broader set of initiatives. And that's why I've mentioned earlier, in terms of responding to the audit observations, we are already acting. We are rolling out mandatory training on unconscious bias. We are going to be moving towards diverse selection boards. We have already issued new directions and guidance to departments about the use of inclusive merit criteria and about how to properly target subgroups in staffing actions where there is a need to improve representation. And we are working with organizations like FBEC to see what other improvements we can make to, again, accelerate the change that you're talking about.
Thank you.
If I may just add, Madam Chair, it's an excellent question, and just pick up on a couple items that the senator very thoughtfully mentioned. And pick up indeed on Mr. Borbey's comments. These changes, these foundational changes to the staffing process, I think, are but part of a broader, quite frankly, co-developed drive to make sure that we're not only improving the staffing process, but we're also tackling things like racism and discrimination in other ways. So really good examples of that are, there's three that I would just like to offer the committee. The first is our Executive Leadership Development Program, which effectively is a program that the public service has to groom aspiring directors. And that program now has made a commitment to reserve 50% of the places in it to the three employment equity groups, so persons with a disability, Indigenous people, and members of a visible minority. It was already well represented for women. That's one commitment that has been made. A second important development is a program called Mentorship Plus, which is basically a program which blends mentorship and sponsorship, so active advocacy on behalf of what are termed proteges. And so it takes basically proteges from diverse groups, persons with a disability, racialized individuals, pairs them with an executive, and that executive effectively is their sponsor and actively advocates them for them at management tables, takes an active interest in their work. And there's a lot of supports that we've developed around that. And there's 9 departments which have rolled it out. and over 30 that will be rolling it out in the coming weeks and months. And the final thing that I'll just mention, and this is a little bit of a longer term project, which was committed to in the budget, was a management development program. And that management development program would be focused specifically on equity seeking groups, members of equity seeking groups, taking aspiring middle level managers and providing them with all of the tools that they need, the opportunities they need, the training and the exposure to be able to accelerate their career trajectory in the public service. So those are some very important, I think, very meaningful initiatives, not legislation, obviously, but incredibly important tools in our toolkit for addressing some of the historical issues that the senator had raised.
So I'm just wondering if you can shed some light for me on what you see as the timeline for this diverse selection committee process that you referred to, Mr. Borbey. When will that be implemented? Because that seems to be one of the potential almost immediate changes that you could make. Mm-hmm. that would make a change on who is filtering the candidate. If your public service leadership is primarily comprised of individuals who are not of a diverse group or any of these equity groups, then their filters are going to pass on to who they select. So can you give me a sense of how when you're going to implement these groups?
Yeah, so we're working on it right now. We're consulting with the employment equity or equity seeking groups. We're going to make sure that we roll this out in a way that's going to work for everyone. I'm a little bit concerned that we don't end up in a situation where the same people are always being asked to be on selection boards just because they're Black, just because they're the only person with a disability in a particular organization. So one of the things that I'm interested in is, for example, can we create rosters of volunteer senior executives from employment equity groups who then could be made available to other departments so that it's not always the same person who's being asked. So those are some of the issues that we want to make sure we work out before we deploy this more broadly. We're also looking at the experience of other jurisdictions elsewhere in the world that have put in place diverse boards, a requirement for diverse boards, so to see what we can learn from their experience as well.
Thank you.